Day two here at the NFL Combine. Of course, we heard from Andrew Berry on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, Mary Kay, we heard from head coach Todd Monken for the second time since his introductory press conference, and quarterbacks were the center of attention. And we'll start with Shedeur Sanders. He used the phrase elite playmaker with Shedeur Sanders. So obviously, look, we've talked about what Shedeur can show on film. We've talked about would Todd Monken maybe like what he saw, and it seems like at least initially he likes what he's seen from Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, that was my big takeaway from this. He was very, very positive about Shedeur Sanders. And the first time we talked to him, as you mentioned, at his introductory press conference, he wasn't as glowing about Shedeur. And he hadn't had a chance yet to really study the film to dig in. But I think now that he's given it a little time, a little bit of breathing room, I think he is seeing some elite playmaking ability. He said that Shedeur Sanders can be ready to start week one, and he was just way more positive about him, actually, than I even maybe thought he would be today. So that was my big takeaway.
Yeah, Ash, I mean, that's something we talked about is Todd Monken isn't going to mince words. He's not going to mess around, and he certainly didn't when the very first question he was asked by Mary Kay was about Shedeur.
No, he didn't, and I thought he gave another interesting answer to Mary Kay's very last question today about his mobility and talking about how he thinks he has a feel for that, like the same way he has a feel for making big plays. Like he just has that X factor. He knows when to use his legs, how to escape, those sorts of things that he maybe didn't get enough credit for around this time last year. But it was interesting, and look, I think, again, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. It's just a difference from Kevin Stefanski as well and how he would handle these press conferences, not really want to single anybody out for anything too positive or too negative. So that's the difference with Todd Monken. He's a bit more effusive when he wants to be.
Now, it wasn't just Shedeur Sanders. Of course, it was also Deshaun Watson and Mary Kay. He said, look, when you've seen a player, and of course I'm paraphrasing all of this, when you've seen a player with that elite skill set, you do want to see if you can maybe bring that back out in him.
That's right, and I think that is significant too, because we know that he is intrigued by Deshaun Watson, and who wouldn't be? You've got a 3-time Pro Bowler on your roster. Of course, he hasn't played a full season since 2020, but if you can tap back into that and see what you can get out of him, I think Todd Monken would love to bring back the elite version of Deshaun Watson. And if you have that going up against Shedeur Sanders with the new vibe and the new energy, they just might bring out the best in each other.
Yeah, and look, when it comes to that mobility element, Ashley, that is where Deshaun Watson is going to have the edge, because we know obviously what he can do with his legs. Now, he's coming off 2 Achilles surgeries, so we'll see, but we know that when he's healthy and right, what he can do with his legs.
Right, and it's unsurprising, like Todd Monken is so confident in his own abilities as a coach. Like, of course he's going to think, well, I have the potential to get that sort of performance from Deshaun Watson again. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think so much of this is going to hinder on what he actually looks like after rehabbing 2 Achilles injuries. And again, we have to remember these guys aren't on the field. Todd Monken's not coaching them up yet. So it's a process that's going to go fast, but there's still kind of a lot of time that needs to pass as well.
Now, if you think it was just quarterbacks in the building, he did talk about one quarterback that at least for now is not in the building, and that was Alabama's Ty Simpson. And Mary Kay, he does have a connection to Ty and his family.
Right, he knows his dad, Jason Simpson, and he had been with him at Southern Miss, or did he attend Southern Miss?
I think, yes, he attended Southern Miss, I think is what it was.
Okay, and so he knows his dad, and that's a lot of due diligence that you can do when you know someone's family member like that very well. And he's watched his career. He's proud of him for sticking it out at Alabama and waiting and finally getting that starting job in his 4th year. He started 15 games there, and he showed a lot of promise, especially early on at Alabama. So he likes a lot about Ty Simpson. The Browns will consider him. He is on their radar. They will consider him at number 6, number 24, number 39, or wherever else they land in a trade.
Yeah, and of course in a draft where Fernando Mendoza is the most likely number 1 pick, Ty Simpson becomes maybe the most intriguing prospect because he's probably the number 2 quarterback off the board. It's just a matter of when that happens and who's willing to take that chance, Ashley.
Yeah, and that way it's very similar to me to last year's draft where Cam Ward, everyone knew very early on he was very, very likely to go number 1 overall, so it very quickly becomes about who's next. And look, I think the connection with Todd Monken is interesting because if there's a world that Todd Monken looks at that and says, hey, I think I can win with this guy, it's definitely something the Browns are going to have to consider.
Okay, a couple other things. Mike Rutenberg, this is the first time we've talked to Todd Monken since he hired Mike Rutenberg. We'll get to meet all the coordinators next week, of course, so we haven't had a chance to talk to Mike yet, but he basically said, Mary Kay, it was his time. It was time for Mike Rutenberg to become a defensive coordinator.
That's right, and I've heard that Todd Monken and Mike Rutenberg, they really hit it off. They spend a whole day together, like the Sunday before he actually got hired. They spent the entire day together, and they just connected really well. And everyone talks about the energy that Mike Rutenberg brings and what a great guy he is. I think the players are really going to love him, and it seems like Todd Monken is willing and ready to give him his chance, but they are also supplying him with help. They gave him a senior defensive assistant in Dom Capers, and when you have a first-time defensive play caller, that will really come in handy.
Yeah, and Todd Monken made the point today, too, Ashley, having that entire staff back just helps ease that transition as well for Rutenberg as he gets into his first coordinator job.
Yeah, there's a lot of carryover, and it also helps, he added the point that most of these starters are coming back. They're still under contract, so there's a lot of continuity even though the coordinator is changing, and I thought it was interesting. We've heard a lot of praise from Mike Rutenberg this week at the Combine. Robert Saleh yesterday talked about how they nearly hired him to be their DC in Tennessee. Of course, he worked with Robert Saleh previously in San Francisco, and he coached linebackers for him when Robert Saleh was the head coach of the Jets. Kevin Stefanski, I saw, even offered some praise for Mike Rutenberg. A very, very short amount of time they spent together, but a guy who, as Todd Monken said today, it was his time. It just seems like he was one of those guys who was going to get a job either this cycle or next cycle.
Okay, one last bit of business here. We said we were going to meet the coordinators next week. I imagine we're going to get some kind of news on this next week as well, and that is Joel Bitonio, the veteran left guard who is contemplating retirement for the second year in a row. Now, Monken was asked today, how many rookies would you start on the offensive line? He kind of hedged a little and left it at about 2, maybe. You know, look, it depends who's the best player also. Like, that's going to determine it. So I'm sure he would love to have Joel Bitonio back. Who wouldn't, Mary Kay? And he tried to convince him, at least. He made his sales pitch.
Yes, he did. And Joel actually was in the building at Browns headquarters and met with Todd Monken, and they had a little discussion about this. And I think that was probably around the same time that the Browns pushed back the void date on Joel Bitonio's contract to give him more time to make this decision. But Todd tried to talk him into it. Joel wasn't ready, but they do need to know probably by March 9th at the latest what Joel's going to do, because do they need to trade for another guard? Do they need to sign one? Do they need to draft one? So that decision will be coming over the next 10 days.
Yeah, I'm sure they have their plan B ready, but they need to know if they need to execute that plan B or really try to execute it. And so, again, I think Joel will probably, I would imagine sometime next week, we're going to find out if Joel Bitonio is coming back or not, Ashley.
Yeah, and I think Joel, like always, tries to do right by the team. He did so last year when he was mulling retirement. So I imagine it's coming soon. It's a big decision, obviously, but Todd Monken didn't mince words today in how valuable it would be to have someone of Joel's caliber. Not only is he the longest tenured member of the team, but we all watched him last year and thought he was still playing at a Pro Bowl caliber level, even though he did not, unfortunately, make the Pro Bowl because they've changed things for guards and the O-line. But it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because we know the Browns want to kind of manufacture this new O-line as they go through this part of this rebuild with this offense, through free agency, through development, through the draft. So Joel's a big piece of that right now.
So Joel Bitonio was in the building a few weeks ago when it was freezing cold. I wonder if maybe he was just there for the golf simulator. But anyway, he was in the building regardless. So anyway, whatever that decision is, of course, we'll cover it at cleveland.com/Browns. But before that, we've got full coverage of everything that Todd Monken said today as well.